Yai mama, yai mama, yai mama, tai yoi mama, ai mama, tai yai, tari dama, yoi baba, mama, yoi mama. Oi mama, ay 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 ay, tari da da ya ri da da ya bom. Oi mama, oi ve ve ya 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 ya. Tarida maya mimamai aima Triyoi mamaya ya mai ya mai tai mamai
Tonight we begin a new course on the book of Ruth, Megillas Rus, together with the other courses that begin this week on the yeshiva.net. Sunday morning, we have a brilliant class on the laws of Shabbos. Sunday evening, another very advanced class in Gemara, Psachim. Tonight, Monday evening, we begin the book of Ruth. Tuesday evening, 8:30, Likutei Torah by Rabbi Paltiel. Wednesday evening is a new course, an express flight into one of the profoundest Hasidic works known as Samach Vav by a Jerusalem teacher, Rabbi Shmuel Brown. And Thursday evening, 8:30, is a critical class, a must watch for any sensitive individual, something that's not spoken about enough, child abuse in our communities. That begins this week, a 6-week course, Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. All of these courses with curriculums on www.theyeshiva.net. I hope you watch them. You can download them afterwards, listen to them, see them. Please comment on them. All the teachers will respond to any comments and questions and give us your feedback and suggestions for the future to be able to accelerate the learning and internalizing of the depth and the majesty of Torah with our global community worldwide. We begin tonight our first class on one of the most beloved, moving books and narratives in all of the Bible and all of the Tanakh. That book which is traditionally read and studied on the holiday of Shavuos, known as the book of Ruth, or Megillas Rus. We're going to study it inside and compiled from some of the basic commentators. And numerous commentaries have been written on the book of Ruth. I will present some ideas and insights, analyze and dissect the motif, the themes, the narrative, some of the details, some of the language used throughout the book of Ruth. And when we complete that, we're going to do something else that's unique, and that is the whole story is explained in Kabbalistic and Hasidic works also as a metaphor, as a spiritual narrative, and we're going to do that also towards the conclusion of our series. The book of Ruth, Megillas Rus, our sages tell us in Tractate Baba Basra, was written by Shmuel Hanavi. It was written by Shmuel the prophet. And its story is placed right in the beginning of Ruth in the time of the Shoftim, the time of the judges. That's almost the 4 centuries, the 390 years between the death of Yehoshua ben Nun, Joshua, who took the Jewish people into the land of Israel, and the coronation of the first king of the Jewish people, Shaul HaMelech, King Saul. During the 4 centuries, the 390 years in between these two eras, The Jewish people are ruled by judges, recorded and chronicled in the book of Shoftim, which concludes that in those days there's no king, ein melech bi Yisrael, ish kol hayasher be'einav yas, everybody did whatever they wanted. So Rus happens, it's placed in the era of the judges, but that itself could be a few hundred years. When exactly? Here there's a major argument among our sages. Some place the story of Rus in the beginning of the era of the judges. Some place the story of Rus very close to the end of the era of the judges. We'll begin with the first chapter, and we're going to focus tonight, on the two sisters-in-law. Ruth and Arpah, a tale of two sisters-in-law. Let's begin. You have a PDF document with the curriculum and all the sources right below the video. Open up Ruth, Perek Aleph, chapter 1. We begin inside. Vayihi b'mei shvait hashoftim. It's in the days when the judges were judging. Vayihi rav ba'aretz. There was a famine in the land of Israel. Vayelech ish mi beis lechem Yehuda. A man who lived in the neighborhood of Beis Lechem, near Jerusalem, in this portion of Judah, of Yehuda, the plot that was given, that was allocated to the tribe of Yehuda. Lagur bizdei Moab. This man from Beis Lechem went to live in the fields of Moab. Moab is, of course, that ancient country in the Transjordan, existing on the eastern side of the Jordanian River, not part of the Holy Land. It's in present-day Jordan. He went to live in the fields of Moab. He, his wife, and his two sons. We still don't know his name. In the first pasuk, we only know that a man left Beis Lechem and went to live in the fields of Moab. Our sages tell us that Shvait HaShoftim, the time when the judges were judging, doesn't only mean when the judges were judging, but Shvait HaShoftim also means it was a generation when Shvait HaShoftim, when the judges were being judged, which means they couldn't rule effectively, as our sages say. When the judge told somebody, remove the toothpick from between your teeth, his response was, remove the beam blocking your eyes. So it was a time when everybody had everything to say to anybody, or anybody could say anything to everybody. This is the time, Shvait HaShoftim, people are judging their judges. In other words, there's no effective authority, there's no effective leadership and inspiration. Now we don't know who this man was. You may think, okay, he was just a man who left Beis Lechem, Israel, the land of Israel, and he moved to the east, to the fields of Moab. So Pasuk Beis, the second verse continues. It wasn't just a regular man. V'shem ish Elimelech, the man's name was Elimelech. V'shem ishtei Naomi, his wife's name was Naomi. V'shem shnei von of Machlon v'Kilyon, and the name of his two sons are Machlon and Kilyon. Ephrasim, they come from the town of Ephras, mi Beis Lechem Yehuda, in Beis Lechem, in the portion of Yehuda. Vayavoyus de Moab, vayiyusham, they come to the field of Moab, and they remain there. Our sages tell us, as Rashi brings right here, that Elimelech, the man, was Osher Gadol, he was very wealthy. Uparnes Hadoir, he was considered a leader of the generation. And why did he leave the land of Israel? He left the Holy Land because of a stingy eye. He was stingy concerning all the poor people who came to his door during this famine, and he did not want to share his food and his wealth with them. So this ulakach nenash, Dr. Rashi, and that's why he was punished. So this is a time of crisis in the Holy Land. He's a leader, both materially, he's a man of great financial means, as well as spiritually. He's a parnes hadoir, he's a man of great stature. At a time of crisis, a leader ought not to leave the place where he's in when people look up to him, both for financial assistance and for spiritual guidance and inspiration. But Elimelech couldn't deal with it. There were too many people knocking on his door, and he did not want to sit and give to so many people. We understand sometimes people can disturb you. People can be nudniks. You know, they tell the story about a schnorrer. A schnorrer is the expression in Yiddish of a man who stands in the street and begs for money. So in Borough Park on 13th Avenue, there was a schnorrer who was asking people for money, and a man walks by dressed in a suit and a tie very prominently, and the schnorrer turns to him and says, you have some money to give me money, give me charity. And the man says, I don't have. So the schnorrer tells him, so go get a job. They say that there was one schnorrer who called up a very wealthy man, Mr. Rothschild, and said, I need a donation, I need a contribution. He wanted to get rid of him. He says, call me back in 12 years. The man says, in the morning or in the afternoon. So sometimes they can get on your nerves, and they got on Elimelech's nerves apparently, and he decided to leave. He can't deal with it anymore. Instead of being there in the center of town, where he is the address to whom people look up for guidance and assistance, it's time to leave. Let him go live alone in the fields of Moab. Nobody knows him. He's an isolated man with his own family. He can enjoy his affluence individually and finally live it up. Why does he need the burden and the responsibility of feeding poor people in a time of famine? And this was a terrible choice, because when you're blessed with affluence, when you're blessed with the resources to help people, and it's a time of crisis, now is not the time to leave. Now is not the time to abandon the ship when it needs you most to keep it afloat. Now, the pasuk emphasizes they came to the fields of Moab, vayiyu sham, they remained there. In other words, first they came for a visit, and then they decided they don't want to be tourists anymore. They're going to live there permanently. Why did they choose Moab? It's possible they chose Moab because of a very powerful pasuk that we know from Dvarim, from the book of Deuteronomy. The pasuk says, "Lo yavai amayni Moavi bekahal Hashem." The Ammonites and Moabites cannot come to the community of God, convert to Judaism. Why? Because when the Jews left Egypt and they wanted to go through Moab, the Moabites did not greet them with bread and water. On the contrary, they were completely selfish and narcissistic. And not only that, the Moabite king Balak rented Bilam to curse the Jewish people. Not only did he not help the nomads who were suffering in Egypt that were now traveling through the desert and bring them some bread and water when they went by in the desert near Moab, but on the contrary, he wanted to annihilate them. And as we'll soon see, this verse will become a major issue throughout the book of Ruth, because the question is, can a Moabite ever convert to Judaism? It's going to become a major issue, but the point I want to bring out is that's why they went to Moab, because the Moabites were stingy. They would not share their bread and water with anybody else. Elimelech found this as a good place for him. The Vilna Gaon, in his commentary on Ruth, indeed explains that living in Moab means that the quality of Moab, not to share their food with others, became the nature of Elimelech as well. You move somewhere because you like the place, but the place also affects you. It affects your psyche, it affects your culture. Pasuk Gimel, tragedy strikes. Vayamas Elimelech ish Naomi. Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, dies. Vatishoyer hiu shnei vaneha. She remains together with her two sons, Machlon and Kilion. Her husband is gone. It's fascinating that the pasuk uses here the word Ishnami. Who is Elimelech? The husband of Naomi. We know that he's the husband of Naomi. He could have said, Vayamas Elimelech. We know that he's Ishnami. On this, the Medrash says, our sages say, that Ein Ish Meis Ela Le'ishtoi. At the end of the day, when somebody dies, he dies only for his wife. Children, as sad and tragic as it is, often move on. We're talking of their adults. They can move on. It's not easy, it's painful, it's devastating, but they move on. But the widow carries a void that can't be articulated in words. Elimelech died, but ultimately it's Ishnami. Ishnami, he was Naomi's husband. That's who. And he dies, a piece of Naomi dies with him. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says the same thing the other way. Yaakov Avinu says in Parshas Vayechi to Yosef, "Ani bevoyi mipadan meisol ay Rachel." When I came back from Padan Aram from Lavan, Rachel died on me. What does it mean, on me? It's like the Gemara, Ein Isha Mesa Ela Labaila. When a wife dies, she dies only for her husband. Of course, many other people suffer the loss. Many other people weep and mourn and grieve her death. But the mourning of their husband, who now lost his life partner, is unparalleled. Ein Isha Mesa Ela Labaila. So it's interesting. From Naomi, we learn out Ein Ish Meis Ela Le'ishtei. From Yaakov, we learn the other way. Why these two? Why from these two? Unfortunately, in history, many husbands have lost their wives who died before them, and many wives have lost their husbands and became widows. The husbands died before them. Why is it from these two? We'll suggest an explanation a little later. It will become clearer. The term that's used here is vatisho'er, she remained. Zak the Medrash, there's a Medrash on the book of Ruth, Medrash Rabbi Ruth, and the Medrash says, she was kishiore menachos, like the leftover of menachos, of a mincha. What's the meaning of the Medrash? So some of the commentators, including the Malbim, the Vilna Gaon, and other commentators, explain in their written and published commentaries on Rus that a mincha is the grain offering that you bring to the Beis HaMikdash or to the Mishkan. And the system with every mincha was that the kohen took a kaimetz of the mincha, which means he took a little bit of flour with the three middle fingers of the 5 fingers of his hand. That became the kaimetz, and that was burnt on the mizbeach. The remainder of the flour was then baked as matzah and eaten by the kohanim. That was the system of a mincha. Now, the quantity of the kaimetz was far, far less than the quantity of the other part of the mincha. The kaimetz was just a very little part of the flour, but yet that's the primary part of the carbon. That goes up in the flames as an offering to God. So the Vilna Gaon says, it says, Vatishoyer, she remained, she's the remainder, she and her 2 children. But they're 3 and her husband was only 1. So on that the Medrash says it was kishiare menachas. Sometimes the kaimetz may be much less, but that's the essence of the carbon. And when that's, and everything else may be much more, but it's only the shirayim, it's shiare menachas. Elimelech was the centerpiece of the family. He was like the nucleus of the family. And when he died, although there were 3 people left, most were left, but they're called vatishoyer. They were like shirayim. They lost that glue. They lost that nucleus. They lost that family unit, that prominence, that presence, that power of Elimelech. It's an insight because sometimes you see a family and there's one person, and when that person is missing, although that person was only one person, but they had an invisible impact that when they're not there, things disintegrate or disintegrate much faster. But Naomi was a very, very special person, a person of very deep stature, of very refined qualities, as we'll see. What happens next is Pasuk Dalet, Vayisu lehem noshim mo'aviyos. The 2 sons, Machlon and Kilion, marry Moabite women. Shema achas Arpah, v'shem hashenis Rus. The name of one was Arpah, the name of the second woman was Rus. Vayeshvu sham ke'eser shanim, and they lived there around 10 years. They marry non-Jewish women, Moabite women. There is an opinion that the woman converted, but the literal interpretation of the psukim and most commentators, including the Medrash, state clearly that they did not convert. They were Nashim Moaviyos. They were Moabite women, women from the nation of Moab. And as we will discuss in the future, tradition has it that they were children or descendants of the king of Moab. The king of Moab was a man named Eglon Melech Moab. Ruth and Arpah were not only sisters-in-law, they were also sisters. They were either daughters or granddaughters, or according to Tosfos, descendants of Eglon Melech Moab, Eglon the king of Moab. That also has significance. First of all, they were royal people. They came from royal aristocratic blood. They came from a very sophisticated, affluent, prominent family. And these were the girls, the young women who married Machlon and Kilion. Rashi uses this as a proof to demonstrate the prominence of Elimelech's family, because the king of Moab would not have his descendants or daughters married off to 2 Jewish guys who they didn't come from a very prominent place. So Ruth and Arpah are now married to these two sons of Elimelech and Naomi, Machlon and Kilion. Did they wait to marry them till their father died? It's possible. It's possible that they only married them after Elimelech died, and he perhaps would protest it and would not allow it, but now they're married to two Moabite women. They lived together for 10 years, and tragedy strikes again. When it rains, it pours. Pasuk Hey, Vayamusu gam shnei Machlon v'Kilion. Both children die, Machlon and Kilion. The woman, Naomi, remains now alone, bereft from both of her children and from her husband. So she is now our focus. She lost not only her husband, she lost both of her sons. She lost everything. Who remains? She alone and her two daughters-in-law, Ruth and Arpah. Pasuk Vav, Vatakam hi v'chaloiseha v'tashav mizdei Moab. She and her daughters-in-law stand up and they return from the fields of Moab. Ki shama, because she heard mizdei Moab in the field of Moab, ki fakad Hashem es amay los islam lachem. That God remembered His nation in the land of Israel to give them bread, and therefore she wants to go back to her origins where there is now food, there is no famine. But it says she and her daughters-in-law get up and they leave the field of Moab. Pasuk Zayin continues this narrative. She leaves the place where she was living together with her two daughters-in-law. And they travel on the road to return to the land of Yehuda, to the land of Judah in Eretz Yisrael. Rashi is perturbed by the fact that it already says in Pasuk Vav that she stood up and she returned from the field of Moab. In other words, she's leaving. And then in Pasuk Zayin it repeats, Vateitze min hamokim. She left the place. It already said that she stood up and she returned from the fields of Moab. And Rashi gives a similar answer to what he gives about Yaakov. In Parshas Vayetze, after at the end of Parshas told us, it says that Yaakov left his father's home and he went to Padan Aram to live with his mother's brother Lavan. Parshas Vayetze begins, Vayetze Yaakov me Beersheva vayelech harana. Yaakov left Beersheva. He already left. So what does Rashi explain there from the Medrash? That when a righteous person leaves a city, the impact of that tzaddik was so powerful. Pana haida, pana ziva, pana hadara. The glory, the light, the splendor of the city is now gone when the tzaddik leaves. So it's not just Yaakov left, Vayetze Yaakov. He left, in other words, his leaving left a major impact because of the influence he had while he was there. Dr. Rashi, the same thing is true with Naomi. Naomi was such a type of person that when she left, the pasuk emphasizes, Vateitze min hamakom. Her departing the place left an impact and had a very, very conspicuous impact because of the light and the grace she conferred upon her location while she was living there. It's possible now that this is why, concerning these two people, Ruth and Yaakov, they are the two people from where we derive that when they died, it affected primarily their spouse. When Rachel dies, it affects Yaakov. And when Elimelech dies, he's Ish Naomi, he's Naomi's husband. The death ultimately affects Naomi, not as much as it affects anybody else. Because with these two people, we might have thought that this truth would perhaps not be as intense. Because after all, Yaakov was such a presence. If when he left the place, even in the life of his father, it was so palpable, it was so conspicuous, it means he had an effect on so many people. Certainly later in his life, when his wife Rachel passed away, he still has so many colleagues and students and disciples and children, and he's such a presence, he's such a personality. Life moves on, so we say, no, ein isha meisa ela labayla. Ultimately, Yaakov's life is never the same, as he said. His life was never the same. Yaakov, the Medrash says that Yaakov said that all the tsaras I had in my life, and he had a lot of tsaras, nothing came close to the sense of loss when Rachel dies. The same is with Ruth. The same is with Naomi. Naomi has such an impact on her place. She herself is such a personality. She herself is such a presence. We soon see in the story her dignity, the way she carries herself, the way she maneuvers her life, the determination, the decisiveness, the clarity, the depth of character, the lack of despair, the resourcefulness. So you might think her husband died. Life moves on, true, but Vayamas Elimelech Ishnami, even in such a case, the impact of Elimelech's death was unparalleled. And that's the sensitivity one has to realize when dealing with a widower or a widow, that all the words and all the explanations ultimately don't scratch the surface of the pain and the loneliness and the solitariness they carry deep in their hearts, that really nothing can replace. And one must be very sensitive to that truth. One must be very sensitive to that when speaking to such a person. One has to know how to be there for such a person. One has to appreciate what they have endured. Now, in Pasuk Zayin it says, she left ushtei kalaisahima, with both of her daughters-in-law. In Pasuk Vav it says, vatakam hi v'chalaisah, she and her daughters-in-law stood up. Why in Pasuk Vav does it just say plain, she and her daughters-in-law? We know she has two daughters-in-law. In Pasuk Zayin it specifies clearly, she and her two daughters-in-law. Shtei chalaisayim. This is an important and significant change from Pasuk Vav to Pasuk Zayin. What's the explanation in it? The explanation is explained in commentators. All of them wanted to leave the same way. They all realized that their mazel is very bad here. The fields of Moab is not a place for them. They have no future here. Elimelech died. Both of their husbands died. Everybody realized, Naomi and both of her daughters-in-law equally realized it's time to go. And that's why it says, Vatakam hi v'chalaisah. In this, they were all unified. It's time to leave. In the second verse, when it speaks about they left the place and they were now heading back to Yehuda, here there was already a split. Here it's two daughters-in-law. It's shtei kalaiseha. Now there's going to be a major split. Everybody wants to leave, but where do we want to go? That's the question. We may all want to leave this place. We want to get out of here. But what do we want to replace it with? What's our destination? Here, as we know, the two daughters-in-law are deeply divided. And this division is already subtly being conveyed by the pasuk saying, "Ushtei kalaisa." It's two daughters-in-law, two people. They may be sisters-in-law. They may be sisters. They may be very close in many ways. But there are two of them. There is a duality here that will play itself out soon, very dramatically. And the pasuk continues, "Vatelachna baderech loshav al eretz Yehuda." They traveled on the road to return to Yehuda. Obviously, how do you go? You don't go on the road? Of course, baderech. You can't go not on the road. What's the word baderech? The Medrash gives three interpretations, Medrash Rabbi Ruth. One interpretation is they literally went baderech. They went barefoot. They were so impoverished, they didn't even have shoes. Vatelachna baderech. They didn't only, it could have said, Vatelachna l'eretz Yehuda. They went to Yehuda. It's not just they went to Yehuda, they went baderech on the road itself. Nobody goes on the road itself. Your shoes walk on the road. That's why we have shoes, to protect our feet, our legs and our feet. But they actually, holchu yachiv, the Medrash says, they went barefoot. Another interpretation is that they actually went on Yom Tov. Naomi wanted to go back to Eretz Yisrael so badly, so even though she shouldn't have walked so much, but she wanted to go back to Eretz Yisrael so badly, she walked on Yom Tov. And that's why he emphasizes Vatelachna baderech. And the third interpretation is that they were observing the mitzvah of Ubelechtecha baderech while they were walking. Naomi was teaching them about Judaism, the basics of Torah. Pasuk Ches. Vatoymer nami l'shtei chaleisah. Naomi tells her two daughters-in-law, Leichna shoivna isha lebeisima. Go, return, each of you, to the house of her mother. Yasa Hashem imachem chesed kasher asisim amesim v'imadi. Let God confer kindness upon you as you have demonstrated so much chesed with the dead people and with me. Go back. Go back to your mother's house. Yitein Hashem, Pasuk Tes, Yitein Hashem lechem u'mitzena menucha isha beis isha. May God give you that you should find serenity, each of you in the house of her husband. Go find a new life, go find a husband and remarry and find menucha. Vatishak lahen, she kisses them. Vatisena koilon vatifkena. They both raise their voices and they weep. Both Ruth and Arpah love their mother-in-law. They went through with their mother-in-law some of the most difficult experiences of life. They watched her lose her husband, their father-in-law. They watched her lose both of their husbands. And they were there for many years together. They had a special relationship. They had each other. And now Naomi, who cares for them, says, leave, go find menucha. I want you to find husbands. Go back to Moab. Go back to the home of your mothers. Find beautiful husbands who will take care of you and will give you a life of tranquility and peace. She kisses them and they're weeping. Pasuk Yud. Vatemarna la. They tell her, Ki itach nashuv la'amech. No, we're going to return with you to your nation. Yud Aleph, Vatomer Nami Nami says a second time, Shoivna b'noisai, return my daughters to your origin. Lama selachnaimi, why should you go with me? Ha'idli banim b'meyai v'hayu lechem la'anashim. Do I have children in my womb that can be husbands to you? I don't have any children in my womb who can marry you. So for the second time she says, Shoivna, go back. You have no future with me. You're young women. You have a bright future. Go back to Moab. Marry your own husbands and find serenity in your life. And then she says it a third time, Yud Beis, Shoivna b'noisai lechna, return my daughters. She now calls them her daughters. Not only daughters-in-law, my daughters, which demonstrates the feeling she has for them. Go back, my daughters, go. Kizakanti miyois liish. I'm too old to marry a man. Ki amarti, and even if I say yeshli tikva, I have hope. I could still marry and have children. Gam hayisi alayla liish, if tonight I'm with a man. V'gam yaladati banim, and I give birth to sons. Pasuk Yud Gimel, halahein to say barna asher yigdalu. Are you going to wait for them till they grow up? You're going to wait 20, 15, 20 years till these boys grow up. Halahente agena lebilte ayois leish. You're going to remain agunos. You're going to remain lonely, alone, and isolated, and not have a husband till they grow up. Albnois, I know my daughters. Kimarli miyoid mikem. I'm very bitter about your fate. Ki yotza biyad Hashem, the hand of God struck me. And I am I, but I feel very bad for you. I don't want you to be able to have to share this fate, this destiny of living a solitary life till the remainder of your life. I don't have children in my womb. Even if I get married and I have children, are you going to wait to marry them? Go back. She says 3 times, Shoivna, and from this our sages derive that when a would-be convert comes to convert, at least 3 times we try to dissuade them, because according to Judaism, we don't want to enthusiastically pursue converts. Only if the convert is very sincere and truly wants to become a Jew do we accept him. If not, there's no need for a non-Jew to become a Jew, because the completion of a non-Jew's life is not by becoming a Jew. He or she can be a full and wholesome human being the way God wants them to be by remaining a non-Jew. So 3 times we try to dissuade the ger from accepting and embracing the Jewish people and the Jewish religion and everything that comes with, and we learn it from this. 3 times she tells them to go away. Shoivna b'noisai. Go away. Pasuk Yudalet. Vatisena koilon vatifkena oid. They raise their voice and they weep even more. They have been weeping before, but now they're weeping even more. This is not an easy moment for them. They love Naomi. She insists that they have no future with her. Leave, go somewhere else. They're crying, and now they're crying even more. Vatishak Arpah lachamoisa v'rus dafkaba. Arpah kisses her mother-in-law goodbye, and Ruth cleaves to her. Pasuk Tesavav. Vatomer. Naomi tells Ruth, Hine shava yevimtech el amav el elekeha. Your sister-in-law returned to her nation and to her God. Her Moab nation, her Moabite nation, and to the God of Moab. Shuvi achere yevimtech. Follow your sister-in-law, return. Tezayin vatomer Rus, and Rus tells her mother-in-law, Al tivgi bila azvech loshav ma'acherayich. Don't beseech me to abandon you, to turn away from you. Ki el asher telchi elech. Wherever you go, I will go. Ubasher talini alin, wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Amech ami, your nation is my nation. Ve'elekayich elekai, and your God is my God. Basher tamusi amus, where you die, I will die. V'shameh covered, and there I will be buried. Kayasa Hashem livi kayoisiv ki amavis yafrid beini ubeinaich. Let God do what he did to me before, and let him add, if I do not hold up this truth that only death will separate between you and I. It's almost like she's cursing herself. Let God punish me more, but I promise now, if I violate my promise, that only death will separate between you and I. So Naomi orders both of her daughters-in-law to leave her, to abandon her, to go back to their mother's home, to find husbands, to start a new, beautiful life. Arpah finally, logically, sensibly obeys her mother-in-law and leaves. She kisses her mother-in-law. But Ruth sticks to her like glue. And she delivers here one of the shortest but most moving speeches in all of the Bible. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your nation is my nation. Your God is my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. I want to now analyze with you for a few moments the difference between Ruth and Arpah. When we read these psukim, we're under the impression that Arpah loved her mother-in-law Naomi, but her mother-in-law made sense. Her mother-in-law said, I have no children. Why should you come with me to Yehuda? Why should you do it? Go back to your home. You guys come from great families. Remarry and start a new life for yourself. Vatishak Arpah lechamaysa v'Ruth dafka, but Arpah kissed her mother-in-law and Ruth cleaved to her. But in Medrash here, there is a scary description of what happens after Arpah leaves Naomi. The Medrash Rabbi in Ruth says, and you have it in your curriculums, in the source. It's the source number one. It's in your sources. Kol oise halayla shapirsha Arpah mechamoisen esarva barvas goyim shalmeya bnei adam. It's not just Arpah left her mother-in-law in peace and tranquility and went to a Starbucks to drink a latte. The whole night, Naomi, what happened? She engaged in immoral, excessive promiscuity, as the Medrash describes, with 100 people. Immoral promiscuity and intimacy with 100 people. The Gemara in Sotah Daf Mem Beis Amid Beis, in fact, says that's the reason why in Tanakh and Shmuel she's called Harpah, not Arpah. Hakol Dashin Noisa Kaharefus. She was intimately crushed like kernels of wheat, as a euphemism for the excessive intimacy she was having. The Gemara in Sotah, the Medrash Rabbah derive it from Psukim that this is what happens to Arpah the night after. But I want to understand why. Why this dramatic extremism from one extreme to another extreme? And what were the Chazal, what were the sages trying to express here? What's the story? What's the motif? What's the theme behind this story? there's a subplot here that we have to appreciate. And for this, we have to go to another book of the Tanakh. We have to go to the book of Shmuel, the book of Samuel. Shmuel Beis, Perek Chaf Aleph, Shmuel 2, chapter 21 reads, you have it in your curriculum, Ves Arbas Eila Yuldu Arpah Begas. A woman named Arpah, which is associated with Arpah, had 4 children. Vayiplu biyad David biyad avodav. They fell in the hands of David, King David, and his servants. Who are these 4 children? Saf, Madain, Goliath, Vayishbi. The 3rd child of a woman named Arpah was Goliath. Arpah had 4 sons. They were mighty giants, and one of them was the famous Goliath. Ruth will also get married. We're going to learn about that later. Ruth will get married. And she's going to have a child. And that child's name is going to be Ovid. And Ovid is going to have a child, and his name is going to be Yishai. And Yishai is going to have a child, and his name is going to be David, King David, David HaMelech. So Ruth is the great-grandmother of David. And Arpah, her sister-in-law, is the mother of a man named Goliath. David and Goliath have one of the most famous confrontations in all of Tanakh. And if you trace back those 2 personalities, David comes from Ruth, and Goliath is a child of Arpah. We all know the story of David and Goliath. It's one of those famous stories. Even when Michelangelo sculptured David, he was compelled to put a little stone in King David's hand. Goliath is a Philistine. He's a Plishti. And the book of Shmuel describes at length, Shmuel Aleph, Perek Yud Zayin, chapter 17 of Samuel 1 in the Tanakh, how Goliath, a mighty giant, 12 feet tall minimum, is terrorizing the Jewish people. Every day for 40 days, morning and evening, he stands and he curses the Jewish people. He curses their God. He taunts them. He terrorizes them. And he challenges them to send one person to combat him. Let the war between Jews and the Philistines be decided by a battle between one man from their side and one man from their side. He both threatens the Jewish people physically and taunts them morally, emotionally, spiritually. And of course, David, King David, who's a young man, goes to bring food to his brothers who are on the front. And he hears Goliath cursing, and he offers his services to Shaul HaMelech, to King Shaul, who wants to, agrees. And David HaMelech says, I can take him on. And Shaul wants to give him his armor, and David refuses. Instead, he takes his sling and 5 rocks, 5 stones, 5 pebbles. And when the Goliath, the Philistine, sees David HaMelech, he says, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And he begins cursing David and God. So after 40 days of cursing day and night, he's now cursing David HaMelech, and he promises David that he's going to take his flesh and feed them to the animals in the field. And David tells him those famous words, Ata boy lai becherev bechanis bechidin, you come to me with a sword and a spear, v'anoichi boy lekecha b'shem Hashem elokei tzvakos, b'shem Hashem tzvakos elokei ma'arachis Yisrael asher chirafta. I come to you in the name of God, the God of Israel, whom you have been cursing. The continuation of the story is well known. David runs over, he takes 1 stone, and with his sling he hurls it on Goliath. It hits Goliath in his forehead. He falls down, he's dead. The Philistines flee. Their mighty giant Goliath has been defeated by David, and peace and tranquility are restored for the time being. Now comes the Gemara in Saita Daf Mem Beis and asks a question. Why 40 days? Why was Goliath standing and taunting and cursing the Jewish people for 40 days? And what does the Gemara answer? The Gemara says that these 40 days correspond to 40 days in which the Torah was given. Moshe went up on the mountain for 40 days to receive the tablets. Those 40 days correspond to Goliath's cursing 40 days. Why morning and evening? The Jews are supposed to read Shema in the morning and in the evening. Goliath did not want them to read Shema, so for 40 days in the morning and in the evening, in the time of Kriya Shema, he would come to curse Hashem, God forbid, and the Jewish people, to stop them from reading Shema in the morning and in the evening. And I want to ask you a question. What in the world is the connection between the 40 days in which the Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu on the mountain and Goliath standing there 40 days and cursing? And Goliath is cursing in the morning and in the evening because he wants to stop them from reading Shema. What was David, an angry guy who comes to the shtibel and doesn't want to let the minions start davening? What's Goliath's connection with Kriya Shema, Shachris, and Arvis? That's what he wants to stop. He wants to destroy the Jewish people. The Philistines hated the Jews. No, Kriya Shema in the morning and in the evening he didn't want. What's the meaning of this? There's another very strange medrash. It's a fascinating medrash. The medrash Rabbi says in Ruth, Rabbi says, B'Shem Reb Yitzchak, Arbayim Psiyas, Holcha, Arpah, Chamaisa, V'nitnu Libna, Arbayim Yoim. Arpah took 40 steps with her mother-in-law, and because of that, her son got 40 days to stand and curse the Jewish people. Arpah followed her mother-in-law 40 steps. Because she was escorting her before she kissed her and she left. 40 steps. Because of those 40 steps, her son Goliath was given the power to stand 40 days and belittle and denigrate and taunt and abuse verbally the Jewish people and their God. What's the meaning of this? The Gemara says also in Saita Daf Mem Beis, Darash Rava, B'schar arba d'moyes. B'schar arba d'moyes shayrida Arpah al chamaisa zachsa v'yatzamenu arba gebarim. Because of the 4 tears that left Arpah's eyes where she was crying for the separation of her mother-in-law, she merited to give birth to 4 giants. Saf, Modin, Goliath, and Yishbi. What's the connection? There's one more statement of the Chazal we have to understand. The Gemara says in Saita Daf Mem Beis Amid Beis, that section of Gemara that's dedicated to Ruth and Goliath and Arpah. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God said, Yavayu b'nei haneshuka v'yiplu b'yad b'nei hadvuka. Let the children of the woman who kissed come and be defeated by the children of the one who cleaved. The pasuk said about Arpah, the words that were used were Vatishak Arpah lachamaisa v'Rus dafkaba. Arpah kissed her mother-in-law and Rus cleaved to her. So Yavoyu b'nei hanashuka v'yiplu b'yad b'nei hadvuka. B'nei hanashuka are the children of the one who kissed. B'nei hadvuka are the children of the one who cleaved. Not the one who was kissed, the one who was cleaved. David comes from Rus. Goliath comes from Arpah. Yavoyu b'nei hanashuka v'yiplu b'yad b'nei hadvuka. The children of the one who kissed should be defeated by the children of the one who cleaved. What's the meaning of all of this? It's as though the kiss was a bad thing, but the kiss was a good thing. And we say because of these tears, she merited 4 giants. And because of her walking 40 steps, she gave Goliath power 40 days. But we say, no, Yavoyu b'nei hanashuka v'yiplu b'yad b'nei hadvuka. Comes the Maharal of Prague. Rabbi Yehuda Levi of Prague, the 16th century giant, and in his work Chidushei Agados HaMasechta Sot explains, and I'm going to read to you a few lines of the Maharal and then try to explain it and elaborate this Maharal. Zog the Maharal, and you have it in your curriculum, Pirush, Ki mibnei aneshuka yukroivim lidavik upirshu. The children of the one who kissed were very close to cleave to Naomi, but they separated themselves. She'ilu loy nashka legamri, if she would have not kissed her mother-in-law, yeshalecha loy mishloiseru yulidavik. You could have said she was completely unworthy of cleaving to Naomi. Ve'en comprisha, there's no separation. There was no relationship. Aval kasher nashka, but when she kissed, this demonstrated that ru'uya haisali davik. She was worthy of cleaving to Naomi. Ki hanishu kuktzas chibur, because kissing represents somewhat of a connection. Upirsha, but she separated. Lekach yavoyu bnei aneshuka v'yiplu biyad bnei advuka. And therefore, the Chazal say, let the children of the one who kissed fall in the hands of the sons of the one who cleaved. Ki ha-misnagdim yiplu ze biyad ze. Because the misnagdim, two forces that oppose each other, that are opponents to each other, that are direct, emphatic adversaries to each other, ha-misnagdim yiplu ze biyad ze. They confront each other, head-to-head collision. One of them will have to fall in the hands of someone else because they're not neutral to each other. They're ferocious enemies to each other. They're misnagdim to each other. Let's use this Maharal's idea as a nucleus and we'll be able to understand somewhat of what happened here with Ruth and Arpah. Arpah was not a stranger to Naomi, and therefore she was not a stranger to Judaism. She lived with a Jewish husband for around 10 years. And not just any Jewish husband. She was married to Kilion, who came from Beis Lechem, came from Yehuda, whose father Elimelech was the Manhig Ador, the Parnas Ador. He was a leader of a generation. So her husband grew up in a Yiddish shtub, not just in a Jewish home, but in a home of leadership, in a home that was saturated with Jewish life, with Jewish values. She married a Jewish boy, Kilion. Even after he died, she was there with a Yiddish mother-in-law, with Naomi. The Chazal say, why is she called Nami? As we'll see later in the story, Naomi comes from the word Neimus, Noyam, sweetness. She was not only a sweet woman without, she was a sweet woman within. She was filled with sweetness. And when she saw her mother-in-law, she sensed some of the sweetness of Yiddishkeit, of Torah, of Judaism. Arpah was no stranger to Torah. Arpah was no stranger to the Jewish people, to their history, to their values. Arpah understood it, she sensed it, she felt it, she appreciated it, and that's why she cried, and that's why she kissed her mother-in-law. As the words of the Maharal, Anishu kuktzas chibur, there was a relationship there. She appreciated her mother-in-law. She saw her mother-in-law's tears when she lit Shabbos candles, when she baked challah. I'm using these things as an expression, as a metaphor. She saw the ecstasy of prayer. She saw the depth of Jewish wisdom. She understood the value of Jewish commitment. She appreciated something of Jewish life. Arpah was saturated with the perspective of Judaism, that every human being is an ambassador of the living moral God to the world, that every act counts and that every act counts and every thought and word is meaningful, that a human life has infinite value and dignity. Arpah saw the depth, the majesty, the wisdom in Judaism, in its faith, in its tradition, in its rituals, in its values. But she couldn't deal with the limitations. She couldn't deal with the boundaries. Because Judaism also demands many limitations and many boundaries. And here we have to learn the words of the Helike Rashi of Rashi. Come back to the pasuk that we were learning. Come back to the pasuk that we were discussing. Ruth tells pasuk Tezayin Ruth tells her mother-in-law, where you go, I'm going to go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your God is my God. Your nation is my nation, right? Where you die, I will die. And there I'll be buried. Zokt Rashi, this was not just a conversation of Ruth saying nice, beautiful, moving words. Rather, there was something very profound being conveyed here. Rashi says, from here our sages derived that Geir Shabolim is Geir Medium like Tzas Einshim. When a convert comes to be converted, you have to let him know some of the penalties of Judaism so that he can go back if he wants to go back. How do we know? Because we see from what Ruth told Naomi, what Naomi told Ruth. Ruth's words were a response to Naomi's words. Naomi told Ruth, as Jews were now allowed to leave the Tchum Shabbos, which means once you reach the edge of a city, you can't walk outside of the city approximately more than 4,000 feet on Shabbos. Out of the boundaries of a city where people live, you can't walk more than 4,000 feet. So Ruth said, where you go, I will go. Why did she say these words, where you go, I will go? She was responding. Naomi was teaching her Hilchas Shabbos. And she told her, if you become a Jew, don't realize you can't take long strolls out of the city. You can't take long walks. There's a din of Tchum Shabbos. You're limited. Shabbos, you can't walk. It's the mountains. You want to walk around. You want to walk more than 4,000 feet. You want to walk a few hours. It's Shabbos. You can't do it. So Ruth said, where you go, I will go. Naomi told her further, a woman is not to be in one room with a man who's not her husband. Do you want that limitation? You want to be in a room with somebody else? A closed room. Amarla basher talini yalin, where you lodge, I will lodge. From her responses, Rashi says, we see what she told her. It's very important when you hear what somebody says, you have to see what was told to them. They're always responding to something. Ruth wasn't just saying, where you lodge, I will lodge. She was responding. From here, we learn the halacha, that when a ger wants to convert to Judaism, you right away have to share with him some of the penalties and the seriousness of Jewish law, so he should know what he's getting into, or she should know what she's getting into. It should be a clear commitment, because what do you need it for? What do you need the Isur of Yichud? What do you need these boundaries? That a man cannot be with a woman in one room without anybody else if it's not her husband. It's a limitation, it's a boundary. It's the Jewish obsession that intimacy is holy, and the relationship between a husband and a wife is very, very holy. And a man and a woman who are alone in a room, it's a form of intimacy. That's how sensitive Judaism is to the energy that exists between a man and a woman. What do you need this for? She said, where you lodge, I will lodge. Marla, she tells her, Naomi tells Ruth, our nation is separated from other nations with 613 commandments. You have a 7-step program for recovery. We have a 613-step program for recovery. What do you need it? Amrallah amechami. She told her mother-in-law, your nation is my nation. So she says, Asalonu b'avedas elilim. We're now let us serve idols. Amarla, she says, Elekayach Elekai. Your God is my God. Arba Mrs. Nimser Lebezdin. Do you realize that in the Jewish court, in the Jewish Supreme Court in ancient times, there were 4 types of death penalties? So Ruth says, Basha Tamusi Amos, where you die, I will die. And she continues, Naomi, Shnei Kvarim Nimsuru Lebezdin, Echad L'Niskalav V'Nisrof, and Echad L'Ragav V'Nechnakim. There's 2 cemeteries for people who get the death penalty. One is for those who are stoned and burnt, and one is for those who are beheaded and strangled. 2 different cemeteries after they're dead. Amrallah, she says, V'Sham Ekaver, there I will be buried. So understand what's happening. Let's understand what's happening. Naomi communicated to Ruth some of the severity, not just the majesty, the beauty, the culture, the Lakshan Kugel, the Kishke, the Kreplach, the sushi, the Chinese food, the songs, the melody. She communicated to her the intricacies of Jewish law that are sometimes very severe. Now, granted, it was very, very hard to get the death penalty in Judaism. That's true. But the halacha, the law remains, and it demonstrates the severity of certain acts in Judaism. So she tells Ruth, what do you need this for in your life? You could be a beautiful, good person without being Jewish, as the verdict, the famous verdict in Rambam from Tosefta Chasidim, a pious Gentile has a portion in the world to come. You don't have to be Jewish. God made you not Jewish. That means for you to live the most perfect life, you have to live your life, not somebody else's life. A Jew has to be a Jew. You're not a Jew. The Jew has their relationship with God. God chose them as a nation to live by Torah and mitzvahs. This is their marriage and intimacy with God. But what do you need it for? And Ruth responds to all of it. The Medrash Rabbah adds something else. And it's a fabulous insight. The Medrash says, Kivan sheshama namikach hischila sederes lohilchas geidim. When Naomi heard from Ruth that she wants to follow her, she told her the halachas of converts. And what's the first thing she told her according to the Medrash? Amrullah, she said, Biti, my daughter, ein darken shel bnei Yisrael leilech lebati tiatrois lebati karksiyos shalaham. Jewish daughters don't go to their theaters and they don't go to their gladiators, where the animals fight against each other and kill each other. So Ruth said, wherever you go, I'll go. I won't go to their theaters and gladiators. Where does that come into the laws of conversion? Hilchas Geidas. But here was the key issue. Arpah appreciated the majesty of Judaism. She appreciated the ecstasy of prayer. She appreciated the depth of learning. She appreciated the fanatical love for education in Judaism. She appreciated the infinite affection to children and family life. She appreciated a Shabbos table. She appreciated a Geschmacke. Kapitel Tehillim, a beautiful song. She appreciated all of this. But that's not all of Judaism. Judaism also has Tchum Shabbos. Judaism has Isur Yichud. You can't be in one room. The laws of modesty, the boundaries between men and women. Judaism has the halachos of 613 mitzvahs. Arpah was torn between two worlds. She loved the laughter and the dance of Simchas Torah, the dance of Simchas Torah, the tears of Tisha B'Av, the tears of Maror by the Seder Pesach. She appreciated it. But she wanted to be able to go to the circuses and the gladiators in Moab. She appreciated the promiscuity, the lack of boundaries, the frivolousness. You do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, wherever you want. To live continuously with an invisible, transcendent God. It's very difficult. This is what Naomi was presenting to Ruth, and this is what Arpah was torn about. She cried. She kissed. She loved Naomi, but she could not surrender. She could not embrace such a life. She could not have the courage to sacrifice so much just to be married to God. I'll kiss you, but I'm not going to cleave to you. I'll kiss you, I'll enjoy your romance, your odor, your sweetness, your countenance, but to cleave to you, I'm not going to cleave. I'm going to kiss. So when Arpah leaves Naomi, as the Maharal says, she's very, very torn. And this is where she experiences tremendous guilt and tremendous sadness and tremendous pain and a tremendous void. She chose the glitz of Moab over the depth of Yehuda. The promiscuity of Moab over the commitment of Naomi. But it doesn't mean it did not leave her with a tremendous void. And that void she had to get rid of, she had to crush, she had to destroy. She was not neutral. She was too close to it, and therefore she had to go to the other extreme. That night was not a neutral night for her. That night she went to the other extreme because she had to eliminate the melancholy, the sadness, the depression, the void that remained. That she went to the other extreme, mamish, with 100 people, as the Gemara describes. She had to stuff herself with promiscuity in order to wash out, to drain the last vestige of her relationship with her mother-in-law. She had to fill herself with tumah in order to get rid of the guilt. What parents don't resolve in their conscious and subconscious, their children have to deal with. The skeletons that we harbor in the depths of our psyches don't go away. Our children often have to deal with them. And if they don't deal with them, their children have to deal with them. Arpah's tragic split came flaring up in the life of her son Goliath. He was not neutral to the Jewish people. He was not a regular Philistine. There was something Jewish in him. So he couldn't just ignore the Jewish people. He had to fight the Jewish people. He had to curse. He had to taunt. He had to denigrate. He had to abuse. For him to feel serenity and tranquility, he had to destroy them so that he should finally feel validated. Because there was a part of Judaism that spoke deeply to the depth of his soul, to the depth of his heart. How would he be able to prove himself right? Only by disproving them, only by destroying them. He had to curse the Rebbeinu Shalom Kevayach. He had to curse Hashem day and night, 40 days. Corresponding to the 40 days that the Torah was given. Corresponding to Krishma, Shachris, and Arvis. He had to destroy the Krishma of the morning and the Krishma of the night. The declaration of the Jew twice a day, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. There's a living God and I'm committed to Him day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Goliath had to destroy it. He had to denigrate it. He had to curse it. He had to undermine it. So that he should finally be able to come to terms with himself. He should be able to find peace with himself. He should find serenity and tranquility. He had a very deep relationship with it, and that's why he was so negative towards it. When David confronts Goliath, they confronted each other as enemies, but they were also very close. They were much closer than we imagine. Goliath was very close to David. Goliath was Arpah's daughter. Arpah was Ruth's sister-in-law, or even sister. Now we'll understand all of the Mamorei Chazal. Goliath had the power of Arpah. It was the power of Torah that moved him so negatively. He was so negative because he was fighting the Torah that was in him. It was the 40 days of Torah that were in his system from Arpah that he was trying to fight. That's what moved him. Because of the 40 steps that Arpah went to escort Naomi, Goliath was standing there 40 days. It's not just two separate things. The 40 steps represented Arpah's relationship to Naomi, her craving, her yearnings for Naomi. And that's what gave Goliath the impetus to fight and fight. He had a relationship. But if you don't have a positive relationship, the relationship is expressed through negativity, through hate. This is what he was fighting. He was fighting that part of himself that he couldn't deal with. It may have been in his subconscious, but it was there. And the 4 tears that she cried brought these 4 giants that hated the Jewish people. And on this the Gemara says, Yavayu b'nei hanashuka v'yiplu b'yad b'nei hadvuka. Ruth didn't kiss Naomi. Ruth cleaved to Naomi. There are kissers and there are cleavers. Goliath grew up in a home of a kisser, so he was conflicted, he was torn, he was confronted. David HaMelech grew up in the home of a dvuka, of people who cleave. They became davuk, they weren't torn. They decided that this is who they are and this is what they embraced. The child of the one who's kissed is always fragmented, is not decisive. They fall in the hands of the bnei hadvuka, of those who cleaved. Once heard a very cute story. I don't know if it's true or not, but the story is a powerful story that they say, the father of the German Enlightenment was Moshe Mendelssohn. He himself was a religious Jew. He had, I think, 5 or 6 children, and most of them converted to Christianity. Moshe from Germany, Moshe Mendelssohn. Most of his children converted to Christianity, as did many, many of his students. This is in the age of the Enlightenment. Moshe Mendelssohn lived at the late 18th century, the end of the 1700s. So they say that one of his students who converted to Christianity, who completely left Judaism, completely, and assimilated very heavily, once came to a rabbi. I read that it was Reb Shlomo Kluger. He was the Rav of Brod. And I don't know if the story is true and the details are true, but he came to a big rabbi, and the rabbi said, "How are you doing? How is your new life?" And he said, "My life is wonderful. The only problem is I have Jewish guilt. My conscience still bothers me. Maybe Judaism is true." So the Rav tells him the problem is that you don't have enough tumah in you. You still have a neshama, you still have a conscience. If you can have enough impurity in you to destroy your conscience, you'll be a serene man, you'll be a happy man. He says, right, but how do I get more tumah in me? So the Rav tells him you have to drink the Negelwasser water. In the morning we pour water on our hands. There's a ruach hatumah, there's a spirit of impurity on your hands. You pour the water on your hands. That water you have to drink, so you'll bring tumah into your system. You'll flush out the tara, and then you'll be able to experience tranquility. So Kach he went home and he drank the Negelwasser water. And sure enough, he became a happy person. Sure enough, he was now serene, he was tranquil, nothing was bothering him, he was a free man. He didn't have a conscience bothering him. When he realized the power of the Negelwasser water, he became an observant Jew. See you next Monday night. Have a wonderful evening.
tarida maya bimamai ay oi mamai oi mamai oi mamai ay daro tarida mai tabima